I'm impressed by the Mets the last couple of days for sure. I'm happy for you. I'm happy for us. Relevant baseball is always a great bridge to football season, which gives us those, those rare years when the Jets and the Giants and the Yanks and the Mets are all doing their thing. And, if the Mets keep going, that's a possibility this year. Problem is, let me take a step back. Before I even identify the problem, and there's still a few, let me first say what the Mets have shown us the last few days, I wasn't even sure that they had anymore, and that's heart. I wasn't even sure that they had heart. I mean, they looked resigned to losing, They looked accepting to losing, almost apathetic to their plight. Hey, we won. Hey, we lost. Didn't see a whole lot of urgency so far from the 2023 Mets. So it's nice to see him fight back a little bit. It's nice to see a little pride, And I was even saying to Hop before the show, I said, this is the first time they've kind of felt like the 2022 Mets. But the problem is the 2022 Mets weren't nearly good enough either. Just the way the Padres smacked them around. Listen, bottom line is this. They're still sub 500 against the losing teams. I still don't trust the starters to go deep. I still don't trust the bullpen. I don't, But I do start with the most basic pushback. They are competing again. And, and that's a welcome sign. But, this notion, here come the Mets. Mets are going to do this. They're not even 500. And they're really not even close. 6 games away from 500 after you've ripped off four straight wins tells me, and should tell you, that there's still a lot of bridges to cross before we start to take this team seriously. I'm not saying don't enjoy the win. That was an unbelievable win last night. And by the way, just a quick aside, the last few at-bats from Alvarez have been unbelievable. You go back to, Thursday? It's been such a wacky schedule. Thursday. So Tuesday's game, he's getting fooled and toyed on these sliders. I mean, he looked like a 12-year-old up there hacking. I mean, he was a mess. He makes a great adjustment. I think he fouled off a slider, kind of locked himself back in, and hit basically a 470-foot moonshot. Really highly impressive and next-level stuff. Uber prospect stuff. He's the real deal. We know that, and that's awesome for the future. And even last night, that was a good pitch. It's a good quality pitch that he went out and, took out the other way. So I'm not trying to be that guy. I'm not. But listen, I didn't even know if this team cared anymore. And I'm sorry, but when we're past July 4th, slightly, and that's the first time that I get the sense, I'm speaking for myself, that they actually do care, okay, about being great or about, being really good and about jumping back into this thing, I'm not taking that hook yet. I used the analogy, I guess it was last week or so, with Teak, You do a little fishing, you're a hook, you see that little shiny silver object in the bottom of the pond, you go up, you investigate, you look, you think, maybe you do a little dance, maybe you try to take a little nibble, get a little piece of the worm, which somehow they always do, those bastards. Let me tell you, worms are not expensive, but it's a pain in the ass when you have to keep throwing a worm on there like every 2 minutes. Maybe I'm just not a great fisherman, even though I do like to fish. I guess there's more skill than I let on. But, man, those guys are sneaky, And I'm not taking the worm yet. I'm just not. I'm not. You can't. And, by the way, I see Evan's tweets last night. He actually – this was a this is – I get it because as a Jet fan, I know his Mets plight. But there is no way that when Alvarez cranks that bomb, right, and the whole dugout lights up, goes crazy, after they've already won 3 straight. Again, I love Ev. But there's no way I'm tweeting, just gonna, as I paraphrase, gonna be a heartbreaking, extra inning loss. Come on, man. See, he's not even believing it. And I don't know that many of you are. And there's a difference between enjoying it and believing it. You should be enjoying it. Hell, I'm enjoying it. It's been fun. It really has been. Do I believe it? I don't. Not yet. Not yet. I can't. They just played too poorly, too uninspired, too disjointed, and too many facets of the game for too much of this season to have a little, I don't want to minimize it, but to have a 4-game win streak completely reshape my thoughts on the Mets. I'm not there yet. And I'm not going to be there for a little bit. I need a lot more. 877-337-6666 here on the Fan. God, I haven't done a show in a while. Almost feel rusty, Hoff. You know what I mean? Got to get those, got to get some oil in those joints. Nah, I feel all right. Hopefully everybody had a good holiday vacation. You know, listen, this is a team that for most of last season, I didn't believe in. Don't get me wrong. There were a few pockets where they pulled me, and I'm like, man, maybe this is just shaping up to be one of those special years. Maybe, right? And then the absence of the additional thumper, you know, some other issues that we talked about last year clearly resurfaced. The Braves series, obviously the Padres in the playoffs. Didn't do a lot this offseason. You lose Edwin Diaz, which is a morale booster. A morale crusher. And also everything else that happens with the other aspects of the bullpen, trying to fill his void. You know, and then you just watch. You watch April. You watch May. You watch June. Listless. You know, it's just too many pockets of either average or subpar performance. I don't see it. I don't see it. How is this now? I would see it maybe if there were 2 teams that the Mets had to jump. What is there, 5? 6? Because that third wild card is a tie right now. So there's at least 5 teams they got to jump over. And the problem is when you're 6 games under 500, if you ask me, hey, how many wins do they need? 87. I'll throw a number out. 88 max. I think if you get that, you're in. I don't think they'll get that. And when you're 6 under 500 and it's almost, before you know it, the All-Star game, you really are not afforded the luxury of another bad week. And you certainly can't have a bad month. And I ask you, you know, despite this rally, this fight, this pushback, the resistance, which I respect by these Mets the last week or so, are there too many holes to fill to avoid that bad month, bad week? And my answer is still yes. What do they do with the trade deadline? I don't know. I honestly have no idea. What was Teague saying? They have, 12 days or so before they've got to determine buyers, sellers. I don't even get wrapped up into that. There's so many different. I'm not even saying it's not a valid point. You could kind of dig into the schedule, whatever. I look at each night almost as a singular entity. And if you're playing well, then those singular entities kind of become who you are. Conversely, when you're playing poorly, you know, you stack the L's, and that's kind of who you are. And too much of this season, the Mets have been a team that is just not it. Not it. So, you know, if you thought I was going to come in hooting and hollering, playing the Mets song, giving Hoff all the praise for shaving his head and getting this Mets win streak, well, I mean, I'll give him praise because he did stand up for his team. Don't see it. Don't see it yet. No, it'd take a lot more to lure me in as a Mets believer this season. 877-337-6666. Tiki and Tierney on the Fan. We're inside of our Town Fair Tire studio. Our friends at Town Fair remind you that you always get the guaranteed lowest price on name brand tires from Connecticut to Maine. Nobody beats Town Fair Tire. Nobody. All right, let's get to you. I'm very curious how this goes because you're fighting the galvanized state, which is a fun state to be in as a fan. I got it. But you're also wrestling with the reality of what you've watched for most of this season. So I'm very curious which is going to win out. Let's get to you. Brad and Minneola, the first up. Brad, what's going on, buddy? How you feeling today?
So, BT, last 2 calls that I've called you, I've literally been yelling about the Mets, and now the season's over and everything like that. Let me start with this. I still believe the season is over, and I even said this in my Mets group chat, which I mentioned last year, that I just want to see great baseball the rest of the year. Watching Senga pitch is an art form. watching Alvarez do what he did last night in a situation where I don't think the situation gets to him at all. He's very clutch in the late innings, as you've seen the last two nights and in other situations during this year.
Yep.
But you were saying that means they got to go 51-30 the rest of the year, which is 3 less games than the Braves did in the first half. Even if Max pitches the way he's supposed to pitch, and Verlander pitches the way he's supposed to pitch, and Senga continues to be an art form, we're still 1 or 2 arms in the bullpen away from even thinking about doing that. Listen, the last 4 nights have been incredible. The breaks have gone the Mets' way where nothing went the Mets' way in June. We're 2 games away from having the same amount of wins that we had in July, but we're also losing today and 3 games in San Diego away from the season being over again in doom and gloom.
Yeah.
Do I think that they're making the playoffs? No, I do not think that. Will a 18-6 month possibly change my mind? 3.5 games back going to the trade deadline? Possibly. A night like last night is incredible. I felt bad for Senga. The way he pitched was absolutely incredible. And if you don't watch the Mets and you don't watch Senga, to all your viewers, turn it on. Even if you're a Yankee fan, it's an art form watching this guy pitch when he's on. But with that being said, they have to win 51 games to get to the number that the Phillies got to last year. And you said it perfectly. With all the holes that they have, it's more than likely not happening. So as a Met fan, and I will say this, enjoy the rest of the year because I do believe the Mets are going to play winning baseball.
Yep.
They're just going to fall a little bit short.
And thanks for the call there, Brad. When you talk about the numbers, I almost don't want to start crunching numbers because it's almost too dispiriting for the Met fan. When you look at what they've got to do to get to where I and most people think they need to get to secure, we'll just start with the third wild card. Let's not go nuts. You're going to have to win a whole hell of a lot of games. Now, that's fine if you're trotting out, Doc and Darling and El Cid and those guys. It's not really fine if you're trotting out Carrasco and the combination of a couple of aging Hall of Famers. And, Senga was brilliant, so I certainly want to make sure I give him his props. But, you just don't have a lot of wiggle room. You just don't, It's like a heavyweight fight. You take the canvas twice. You get clocked. You can't go down again. I'm not saying that that's not going to happen, but if you go down, it's over. They're going to call it or you're just not getting back up. And I just kind of feel that way with the Mets. And, you could process it one of 2 ways. You can process it intellectually or emotionally. Or really a hybrid of the two, which is what I'm trying to do, which is the third option. Because if you do it intellectually, pragmatically, sure. You start crunching numbers. If we do this, if we do that, everything's in front of us. We control destiny. We've got X amount of games left. It's going to take this amount of wins estimate to get there. Fine. All right, that's a numbers thing. That's one way to do it. Emotionally, you're either riding the wave, the crest of the last almost week or so, and that propels you to a place that I don't believe is realistic with all due respect. Or emotionally, you're still hanging on to what's been about, thus far, a wildly disappointing season. And that's probably not even fair because they have shown some real life the last week. So the answer is probably somewhere in between. I'm crunching numbers and I'm processing what I've seen so far this season. I don't love the numbers and I don't like what I've seen this season. So that's what leads me to deduce what I think is going to happen with the Mets. But, man, I could absolutely be wrong. And it looks like Mike in Queens says the Mets are back. What's going on, Mikey? How are you today, bud?
Hey, what's up? Last night's game was amazing. But here's the thing. I think the Mets have the talent, and I think you agree, they have the talent to go on a very, very good streak. But Buck has to manage the next 4 games like playoff games. He has to. He cannot. You have to win 3 of the next 4 if they're going to continue this streak. And that means 2 things. That means pushing your pitcher if he's pitching well, which he did last night, and it means going out of Vino to Robertson every single night. Every single night. You cannot play around with these games. These are playoff games, and probably till the trade deadline, where hopefully, if we're playing well, we can get some help in the bullpen. But they have to be managed like playoff games.
Yeah.
There's no playing around.
Well, by the way, Mike, I don't necessarily disagree. First of all, both guys, this is going to sound callous, but It is what it is. Both guys are older. You don't have a ton of money invested in either. So just, grind them to a nub here and let them limp to the All-Star game and let them regenerate during the All-Star game. I totally agree. You're right. This notion of, well, so-and-so pitched, 2 nights in a row, he can't get it out. Nonsense, man. Suck it up, get in the game, get it out, let's go. Keep the train moving. At this point, and Alonso's got to, Pete, you got to wake up, dude. You got to wake up. Pete's got to wake up. I know the injury derailed a great power start, but even when he was healthy before that, there was no average. Pete Alonso's got to start playing better baseball. He must. Now, I'll tell you this. When you look at, and this is just to kind of gravitate toward the positives now, because there were a lot last night, and there's definitely some this season. Like last night's Senga, boy, that lets you think a little bit about, all right, down the road, we've got a guy, 3, 4, I know it's a 5-year deal, but 3, 4, 5 years, he should be in the middle of a lot of good stuff. Alvarez, star. The more Beatty, and what I love about Beatty is that, you're seeing this proclivity. Oh, just because Tiki's off, it doesn't mean we can't use good words here on the show. You know what I mean? To hit the ball to left field. And that's the thing that I love about him, and that's the thing that I loved about him when I first saw him last year, right? Even Nimmo. Now, I've always been a Nimmo fan. To be fair, I always thought he was slightly overrated, and what I mean by that is when you are and I've done this a million times too, so trust me, I'm not calling anybody out. When you're a fan of a bad team, now they obviously were really good last year, but before that, you tend to overinflate what you have. Think about how many times you've done that with the Knicks. Think about it. I'm not even going to start listing players' names. There's 20 guys, that we've watched. We're like, I'll give you one. Landry Fields. Oh, boy. This guy, that's an old one for you, right? And Nimmo's better than that. But the point being, I always thought that Nimmo was slightly above average. Not a ton more. I'm starting to see a guy who, with this new tweak in approach, willing to strike out a bit more. Why can't he pop 25? Moving forward. So there's definitely things to like. Definitely. Is this a playoff team? No, it's not.